Welcome to my presentation on Jean Lave. Jean Lave is a social anthropologist who has made major contributions to the field of educational psychology. She received her PhD from Harvard in 1968 and has conducted extensive ethnographic research on apprenticeships and on everyday applications of math skills. Her work has focused on reconceptualizing learning as primarily a social practice. In collaboration with Etienne Winger, she developed the theories of situated learning and communities of practice, which have been influential in a variety of fields, from education to business. She is currently a professor of education and geography at the University of California, Berkeley. She has several seminal works, including Cognition in Practice, published in 1988, which highlights the situated and contextual nature of everyday math practices and problem solving. Another influential work is Situated Learning, Legitimate Peripheral Participation, co-authored with Etienne Winger and published in 1991, which further explores a social theory of learning and introduces the concept of communities of practice. Her work is based on ethnographic research conducted among a variety of cultures and settings. From 1973 to 1978, Lave observed apprenticeship among the tailors from the Vai and Gola tribes in Liberia. Her research was based on the work of Scribner and Cole, who had begun to challenge the predominant functionalist view of cognitive psychology in education, which considered formal learning to be superior. The functionalist perspective considered informal learning, such as apprenticeships, as incapable of producing knowledge and merely a reproduction of existing practices within a community. In contrast, Lave found that the tailors learned many complex lessons from their apprenticeships, such as the social relations and mathematical problem solving necessary to be successful in the markets. The apprentices were also observed in the school setting. In the classroom, they used different problem-solving methods and were less accurate than when they encountered similar problems in the workplace. Lave continued her inquiry into socially situated problem-solving and learning in Irvine, California, as part of the Adult Math Project. She and others observed people in everyday practices such as comparison shopping. She observed that shoppers used a variety of arithmetic skills quite successfully, but rarely used the methods taught in school. Furthermore, they were able to consider many attributes of the problem at once, such as storage capacity, family size, and shelf life. The participants were then given similar problems on a test in a classroom setting. The shoppers were much less successful in the classroom and calculated with only a 59% accuracy compared to the 98% accuracy performed in the supermarket. Another interesting finding was that the number of years of schooling had a sizable effect on how well the shoppers did on the school-based test, but no measurable effect on their performance in the supermarket setting. From these studies, Lave developed several highly influential ideas that required a reconceptualization of learning and teaching. For example, she developed the concept of situated learning. Building on activity theorists such as Vygotsky, she argued that all learning is context-specific and is most effective within authentic, real-world settings among experts. She argued that learning is a social process. As she stated in 1988, cognition is a nexus of relations between the mind at work and the world in which it works. She further argued that studying learning in informal environments offers an escape from what she called the claustrophobic view of cognition from inside the laboratory and school. Within this perspective of learning, the research lens is moved away from the teacher and teaching to focus fully on the learner and learning. Lave's work showed that decontextualized skills did not transfer well to real-world situations, and that knowledge developed in practice was more effective. Communities of practice, introduced by Lave and Winger in 1991, is another important concept. A community of practice is defined by three necessary components. First, there must be a community which fosters interaction and relationships. Secondly, the members of the group must participate in shared practices. Lastly, the community has a shared interest in a specific domain of interest. Within this framework, Lave and Winger defined learning as increasing participation in communities of practice. Learning is seen as a process of becoming a certain kind of person that will be accepted into the community of practice. For example, cheerleaders learn not just the skills to perform their cheers, but also how to act as a member of the team. Similarly, doctors, in addition to acquiring skills and a knowledge base, must learn how to behave as practicing medical professionals. They develop an identity as a doctor. According to Lave, identity is the production of persons in activity and is inseparable from learning. Despite her contributions, Lave has some critics, including John R. Anderson, a cognitive psychologist at Carnegie Mellon, who has written direct criticisms of her work. Anderson is an influential educational psychologist himself, so it is worthwhile to compare some of their ideas about cognition. While Anderson agrees that context is important for learning, he disagrees that learning is always and completely tied to a specific context. To support this argument, he points out that skills such as reading transfer easily from one context to another. Additionally, Anderson takes issue with Lave's claims about the lack of knowledge transfer from school settings. He argues that transfer is possible, but depends on a variety of factors, such as the amount of repetitive practice and attention to task. He further argues that all learning does not need to be of an authentic nature. He explains that authentic everyday problems do not always provide the cognitive complexity needed to teach a concept in higher-level subjects such as algebra. Finally, Anderson challenges the idea that learning must happen in a social context. He points out the frustrations that often occur in cooperative learning groups, from disagreements and unequal sharing of the workload. He concludes that instruction should combine social components with more individual learning and training tasks. Scholars who are more supportive of Lave's work have voiced some criticisms as well. And beyond communities of practice, a variety of scholars put forward suggestions for how the work could be improved. For example, Trusting argues that Lave and Winger did not pay enough attention to issues of language and power. Despite criticisms, her ideas continue to have a significant impact in a variety of settings. Businesses have embraced the notion of communities of practice, and her colleague Winger has worked as a business consultant. Her ideas have also been influential in educational technology and other forums for social networking. Internet groups can be considered communities of practice and can be sites for new, less hierarchical types of learning. Lave's work has many pedagogical implications. Cooperative learning can provide opportunities for social interactions and authentic learning. Role-playing gives students the opportunity to act as professionals do and to experiment with the tools and clothing of that community. Field trips can give students the opportunities to observe and practice in the authentic environment. Looking back at my time as a second-grade teacher, I can see Lave's influence in my work. I tried to give my students opportunities to act as experts. For example, during writing workshop, they were authors with real opportunities to write for meaningful purposes. We acted as apprentices by carefully reading the writings of our favorite authors and trying to mimic their styles and strategies. They had opportunities to act as scientists. For example, we did an engineering project in which they communicated with real engineers to design and complete a movable puppet. After reading Lave, I would incorporate more of these apprenticeship learning opportunities into the curriculum if I were to return to the classroom. In 1996, Lave stated that teachers need to know about the powerful identity-changing communities of practice of their students, which define the conditions of their work. I agree in the power of home-school connections and in knowing students well. Therefore, I would work hard to improve those connections through better communications with parents and through more opportunities for students to share about themselves. As an emerging scholar, I am inspired by Lave's work and identity. I have been focusing my research concerning literacy coaching and second language learning through a lens of identity. I am looking forward to reading her work in more detail to further develop my theoretical framework. As Henning stated in 2004, It would be difficult to overstate the enormous contribution that Jean Lave has made to studies of everyday cognition and situated learning, and to the formulation of a social practice theory of learning. I enjoyed learning more about her work and believe that it will be beneficial for my future work as an educator